Good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and then we can get right into the topics for the day.
Well, thank you so much, Robert, for having me in this guest speaker lecture. It's really an honor to be part of this conversation. My name is Abhishek Patil, and been in Omaha for close to 9 years now. Love the winter and the weather and the people out here. So maybe that's the reason I'm sticking back in Omaha. And prior to that, I was in England, and before that, I was in India. I started my career back in 2008 into IT. Started in mostly into databases side and data analysis and all those side. Coming from the background where I started my career with an Indian MNCs like ITC Infotech and a Tata Consultancy Services, and then moved to IBM, which was my biggest jump. There I started working into banking and telecom projects as a consultant, mainly in implementation of the business intelligence tools and applications and all those things. Wonderful opportunity, got to travel around the world, been in Mexico, Amsterdam, England, worked all over the place, and came back to India and quit my job after 5 years and came to Omaha to do my master's. In 2013, and did my majors in data management and management information systems, and graduated in 2015. Since then, I have been part of several companies within Omaha, starting with CSG International as a business analyst. Again, call it a luck. I always got to travel jobs. Been traveling throughout the US, helping clients transform into a new system as a part of a data conversions team. What we had, we were responsible for converting all the data from the old system into the new system and converting them as per the needs of the client. Then did a few consulting jobs, and again came to a full-time job into Database USA, which was really my core data analysis, what I used to do. Database USA is a spun-off from an info group started by the same owner, where I had an opportunity to do multiple things, because it was a small company to start with, and you had to wear multiple hats. And I got to get exposure into the client side of it and the data side of it. Got to build the team of extract, transform, and load team, or the ETL team, or the data team, what we call them. We used a lot of data coming in from the business and the consumer side. Did a lot of data mining and analysis, and how we're gonna improve the data quality aspects of it, which is really an important aspect. And then be part of the customer discovery calls, understand how they're going to use my data, how they're going to leverage the data, how are they going to be using this data, which is going to helpful for them to increase more marketing concepts and attract more customers to their portfolio. This includes a client like Apple, Dell, and most of these clients where I used to interact and understand the needs of the data and help them establish the connection between our systems, their systems, enable the seamless data flow and all those things. Getting lots and lots of exposure. Then my, again, biggest jump was in PayPal. Been here for close to 3 years now, and joined here as a lead, and we are part of an accounting team here right now. And I lead a group of people, consultants and a full-time, so we're responsible to make sure all the ledger postings and everything in the PayPal is happening right. We have terabyte of data coming in every day, and I'm responsible to make sure that those data gets reconciled, processed, and end users access those data without any issues in terms of qualities and duplications and all those things, and making sure that debits, credits are posting correctly and reconciliation is happening correctly. Over a bit of time, last year I got promoted as manager of the team, and now I manage a group of people, a bunch of talented data analysts, system analysts, and we are responsible to make sure that on-prem system, on-cloud system, everything is intact. System is designed well, efficiently, performance and everything has been taken care of. The same team again, responsible for data enhancement, data modeling, and all those things that we do around here, the fancy stuff, right? So my team is responsible for end-to-end thing, and I manage all those things in the accounting org. This is a little bit about my professional background. Coming a little bit about my hobbies. I love traveling, and I love to see different places. I like to collect a souvenir shot glasses. I have close to like 50 souvenir shot glasses right now, collected from different places. I collect those every time I visit for the first time. So I like to stack them up and refresh my memory all the time. Other than that, when I'm not traveling, I like to spend time with my 2-year-old daughter, who always keeps me busy, running around with her and playing some stuff with her. That's what my life looks like so far.
Wonderful. That's really an incredible background. What I'd love for you to start focusing on when it comes to this guest speaker spot is the
Sure.
actual implementation process. You mentioned that you do a lot of work with the customers. And so what were you looking at when it came to the stakeholders, the different frameworks, and how did you ultimately decide on which plan to put into place for what you were trying to implement?
So sure. It's always the niche thing is to understand who the customers are, what their financial status is, and what their data capacity is, and how are they going to leverage the data. We worked from the client Apple to the startups, right? So Apple is humongous, and their data consumption capacity, their usage of the data is going to be lot more different than the startup companies, right? So, one thing you got to keep in mind is, are the systems capable enough to consume the data that they are requesting for? Most of the times the startups, they don't have that visibility. So here you have to champion that. And it also gives you a good platform to build a relationship with the startup companies and help them like, hey, do it this way. It helps you in a better to do that way. Because most of the times I've seen the startup companies are more focused towards the growth, more focused towards the customer acquisitions, reaching out to customers, revenues, and because they have some seeds and they have to prove to the investors what they're doing. Most of the time these things are left behind. The technology piece, the data management piece is left behind. When they reach out to us, when they are purchasing the data, when they are implementing the data, you can wear that hat, and that also not only gives you an exposure to see the new system of the data consumption, and also helps you build a rapport with the client, right? The startup can become a big company tomorrow. That relationship that you build at the grassroots level goes a long way. Now, that's one way of looking at it. The other way to look at it is Apple, right? So, for example, Apple, Dell, or any of those. When we meet with the client, what they are mainly focused is, you don't worry about the systems. I have a team of people who take care of the systems. I have a team of people who take care of the data. You tell me, how are you going to provide the data? You tell me how clean data you're going to provide, right? So their main focus is to get the clean data. Their main focus is to get the accurate data. Their main focus is to get the data that makes meaningful sense for them to start the analysis, right? So they expect us to provide the quality data, and which is ready to eat. Think of it this way: it's like you're getting a cooked chicken at home to eat it. But when working with the startup companies, you have to give the ingredients for them to cook, and then they can consume that chicken and make it a delicious meal. So this is how you have to look into that one. And again, companies like Apple or Dell, they have budget, they have amounts in hundreds and millions of thousands of dollars. But when it comes to startups, they'll have very small budget, but you'll have to, it's a challenge how you're going to condense this data consumption in a small amount of money, right? And make it more efficient for them. So that's how I would look at it in different ways.
Then when you're looking at a new project, is there any process that you go through to decide what are the steps that you need to make? I know we talked about the different types of businesses that you've worked with, but what's the actual
Right.
approach that you go through when it comes to a new project?
So interesting question, right? Again, there are so many things. The process that we have to look is system connectivity. The small companies, again, I would like to focus on small companies. They don't have a very good, robust technologies, right? For them, it's going to be more like sending the data in a text file. They can put it in an SFTP server. They pull it out from there and they consume it that way. They don't have a very strong security assets. They mostly rely on the open source security stuff, which is tweaked and made multiple things to it. So that's one of the process that we have to look in. Security, transformation of the data or transfer of the data again, and then how are they consume the data and the timing and the availability of the data for them, right? So if I promise you to deliver the data around this time for you to pursue with the analytics and so that your leadership can see what is happening, you are time bound for those. Those are some of the processes that we need to look into. For example, when I was working in a previous company and dealing with Equifax, Everybody knows what happened to Equifax, the data leak and everything, right? The best example. Initially, we were putting them in SFTP server, and then they were consuming that data. For a company like Equifax, SFTP is enough. Maybe they realized it too late, right? What happened to Equifax? Everybody knows that the data leak happened, and almost 90% information was already being leaked, right? So during that time, they were quick, and they called us for a call, and they were like, "Hey, this is what happened. We're gonna change the whole process. How we're gonna receive the data? It was all business and consumer data that we're gonna model and give it to them, right?" So they made a PGP. First thing, you got to PGP it, and they're gonna have their own host where we have to upload the file. Right now, that means backend, I will have to tweak my code, the processes that consumes the data, processes it, and the connection has to be established where it was posting the data. Now that entire chain has to be changed, right? So these are some of the processes that you need to understand based on the client, and every process changes based on the client, right? So when you are a data provider, you'll have to be flexible enough to make sure that your technology readily equips to the new company right away, from companies like Equifax, Apple, to a startup, right? So these are some of the aspects that you'll have to look into, and these are the processes that you'll have to establish in the beginning, right? So making sure that your technology is flexible enough, making sure your data is seamless, making sure that you don't have any glitches when you're transferring the data. The network is always up and available, because I have seen that sometimes in startup companies, network drops, and that when your file transfer also blocks, and then it resumes again. In that period of time, there is so much of lag, and everything has been lost. You'll have to redo some of the stuff, right? So these are some of the step-by-step processes that you'll have to take. But if I have to sum it up in one-liner, you will have to analyze holistically from startups to the top-notch companies.
I think it's very powerful. Can you talk a little bit about the utilization of the data to make business decisions? How do you ensure that you're putting it into place in a way that can actually make actionable insights?
Yeah, so that's again an important question here, right? So we have also seen a customer where, without realizing the fact, they consume the data. And then over the 2 months of a time, they came back and said, "Hey, this data is not making sense to me. I want to cancel a contract," right? You will always have to have those. That's when we come into picture. When I mentioned initially, I used to be part of the discovery calls. Try to extract as much information as possible. You always get an open-ended answers, but your questions has to be such that it has to be an open-ended question, right? You're just don't want to say that, okay, are you going to use this data for a company specific only? I would rather put it as, how are you going to use this data, right? So in that way, you're going to get multiple answers to to this question, right? So that's one thing of it. Now, when it comes to businesses, right? Excuse me. Let's take, for example, hotel business, right? What are you most interested in? The foods, the suppliers, the Grubhub data, and all those things, right? So they don't have to worry about the data that I'm going to provide is going to be how many computers they need, how many room space they need, and whatever the internet speed they need, and all those things. Or even for the matter, employees, how many they need. They don't need that. All they need is who is faster, Grubhub or Uber Eats, or which is the one, and where can I get the cheapest food? Is it going to be a Walmart, Target? Who is the cheapest food supplier? Now, the same chicken might be $2 in Target, might be $1 in Walmart, right? So based on that, we'll have to build a more robust analytics on how they're going to use the data. For example, as I mentioned in the previous company that I used to work for, we did a lot of data mining and analysis, right? So Apple, for example, used to, let's say, for example, you are a customer, you're going to a store, and the company has told you to buy a phone for yourself, right? And they'll reimburse that money. You go there, you buy a phone, but instead of registering your office address, you're going to register it as a home address, right? Now, what Apple is going to think is, since you bought a phone, you're going to be using it for your office purpose, but your address registered is for home. Now, they will think it's a consumer sale and not a business sale. Now, here is a trap, because your address says it's a business. Sorry, your address says it's a home, but you're going to use it for a business. Now, here, we provide a data for a business and consumer data, and then based on what usage you're going to be using, where you're going to spend most time with that one, what calls you're going to get most on those. When you are in office between 9 to 5, you're going to get most You might not get a call, but after 5, you might get a phone call on this one because you're on call or something like that. Based on that, we need to provide an analytics stating that, okay, even though this customer has taken this phone, purchased as a home address, but see his call records. After 5, he's getting most calls from the office, right? So because he's been using this as an office purpose, and now this is a thing that we used to provide those analytics to the customers, where there was a data exchange and all those things that used to happen, provide analytics and give it to them. So this is what you got to be looking into mostly when you have to implement the data, when you have to suggest what and how to use the data.
Those are powerful insights. I think for the ability to be able to make those decisions, it really does come from the clean data and understanding what the data is saying. Are there any tools or softwares that you're using to help make those decisions or to display that information, to visualize it?
Yeah, see, in PayPal world, it's different. It's all transaction based, right? So when it happens to the postings, you might be making only one particular transaction for $10, but I might receive it as 2, right? Because let's say, for example, there are 2 scenarios here. You make an online shopping and you cancel it, right? But when it happens there, the $10 is already a transaction being created. Now I'll immediately get that $10 transaction is already been created. But if you cancel that, the $10 transaction is again being canceled. But here what happens is I'm assuming this $10 that is available is going to be a real transaction, which is not being canceled. And after 2 hours, you come back and you decide that, okay, I'm going to buy that for $10 again. You're going to make that same transaction again, and that's going to come in as a duplicate. But if you see here, that's not a duplicate transaction. One is canceled and one is a true one. Now here we have certain tools and technologies that we use to name some of them, like Informatica master data management tool that we pretty commonly use, and data quality for SSIS from the Microsoft, where we have the inbuilt data quality tools that we use to filter out such transactions, because they have certain keys and certain components that we rely on. What is the reverse transaction? What is the actual transaction? These things that we'll have to filter out. But how we represent that is how many duplicates are we getting? How are we getting those things, right? So we use Tableau, we use some of these Power BI tools that we use to filter out, to represent which are the duplicate data, which are the actual data, and what's the actual numbers that you're going to receive. Because in finance world, duplicates means a lot, right? So $10 makes $20. Now you think about in millions of dollars of transaction, the data has to be crystal clear and clean before you make anything out of it, right? You cannot represent like with the duplicate data to leadership, so that we need to have a clear-cut description and clear-cut display what is duplicate and what is not duplicate. So that, as I mentioned, Informatica tool is one that we use, master data management, and Microsoft data quality tool that we use. And to represent those, we use Tableau, Power BI, and also to display the clean data, we also use a BobJ report from SAP.
Wonderful. I think there's a multitude of utilizing different software tools that can be used. I think some of the more common ones are Power BI and Tableau when it comes to enterprise utilization. Are there any tools that really stood out when you were working with some of those smaller businesses that aren't as common?
So, the other tool, I don't know if many people have heard about it or not, but it's fast growing, Alteryx. Alteryx is one beautiful tool. It helps you to leverage data, and it is easily connectable to Tableau. It is easily connectable to Power BI. It's easily connectable to any other thing, right? The other thing that I always came across and amused me was Splunk. I don't know if many people know about Splunk. It's an open source one. I don't know if recently somebody bought it. Splunk is again a beautiful tool for data representation and analysis as well. And now Amazon provides beautiful tools as well, the Amazon Web Services. I'm not too familiar on the Azure side, but I have extensively worked on Amazon Web Services. They have got some wonderful tools as well to represent the data. And Alteryx is one thing I would encourage people to start explore, because I attended a seminar or a conference in San Francisco a couple of years ago. It gives a very much inbuilt tool. The Alteryx itself stands for alter everything. So that's how the name came up, Alteryx. So it's easily compatible to anything. You can easily transform the data, filter the data, data quality and representation of those data. These are some of the wonderful tools to use.
Wonderful. Any last thoughts for our students?
I would always say keep your mind open. When it comes to data, it's wonderful, and if I have to put it in one line, SQL is soul. So it's not only a relational database; it's also going to be NoSQL in the future. And data is a wonderful thing. You can create wonderful things out of the data, and always keep your mind open when you're talking to customers, and always ask open-ended question that helps you think more.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today.
Yeah.
If our students would like to, is there a way they could reach you to follow up with any questions they might have?
Absolutely. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I can share the details offline. And you can always reach me out on my best Gmail address is abhispatl@gmail.com. And in case if you want to talk to me, or you need some mentorship, or talk anything about your career progress or aspects, I'm all willing to volunteer and help students for their growth. And I'm available anytime.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.